What is going on, everyone? This is Sarah coming at you from just outside of Hartford, Connecticut. And today we're going to look at the MLB standings as of the morning of August 9th, 2021. It's been just over a month since I did one of these videos, so I figured now's a good time. We're about a week removed from the trade deadline, so we can kind of see if some teams made the right moves by buying or selling. Without further ado, we'll start by discussing the AL East. Now, I'm not going to read their records, I'm just going to read the names and what place they're in. So you have Tampa in first, Boston in second, the Yankees are in third, Toronto a half game behind the Yankees in fourth, and in a distant last in this division, you have the Baltimore Orioles. So Tampa Bay's been a good team. They've overcome some big losses, and they kind of surprised some people at the deadline when they traded away Rich Hill and Castillo, but you never know with this team. They can always seem to get something out of pitchers that everyone else has given up on. So right now, the Rays, they have a critical series coming up against Boston, where if they can beat Boston, if they can take this series in Boston, it's going to be huge for them. It's going to be crucial for them. And with how things are going, it's definitely possible. The big thing for Tampa Bay is, can their offense continue to produce? And how much will losing Tyler Glasnow, who's probably going to have to undergo Tommy John surgery, going to hurt? Obviously, this is more than a 2021 concern. This is going to linger into 2022. So Tampa Bay should continue to stay in first place, but we have to see. Now, behind them, we have Boston, and unfortunately for Boston, they're trending in the wrong direction. They've lost 9 of their past 11 games, so they're not doing great. Now, on the bright side for Boston, Chris Sale is looking to come back from his Tommy John surgery, but how much are you going to really let him play? He's your ace. You don't want to rush him back if you don't think you're going to make a deep run in the postseason. So we'll have to see how they're trending, if they continue to go up or down. Other than that, the offense has cooled off since a red-hot, blistering start. Verdugo is probably the best example of this. He started off the season great. Now he's borderline, dropping to the bottom of the lineup. So we'll have to see. Next, you have the Yankees. And the Yankees, this team, They've been the Yankees. They've been dealing with injuries, of course. Stanton and Judge both have missed time since we last did our video. The pitching staff, Kluber's at least close to coming back, but now Garrett Cole, his struggles are continuing. He's had a couple good starts, but he's like, cold, hot, cold. You shouldn't be getting that with your ace, a guy who you paid over $300 million to. But we'll have to see. On the bright side, Tyleon's doing solid for them, recently at least. So, while some pieces are struggling, others are stepping up. Gleyber Torres has kind of heated up lately. Unfortunately, he did get hurt in Sunday's game. Hopefully, he comes back sooner rather than later. Next, you have Toronto. And Toronto, this team basically is George Springer right now. George Springer is just red hot. It's insane how good he's doing. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. probably a frontrunner for the AL MVP award. So this team has a lot of talent in Toronto. The pitching staff still isn't spectacular, but they have had some good starts recently from certain players. Ryu's kind of looked like he's turned the corner. Barrios has had 2 stellar starts for the Blue Jays since they acquired him at the deadline. So there's a lot of hope for Toronto. Yes, they're in 4th place, but this is a very close, tough division. Toronto looks like they're trending in the correct direction. Now, in last place, you have the Baltimore Orioles. And, really, are you expecting much out of Baltimore? It stinks for them that they're in this juggernaut of a division, and they're not doing good. They made a couple of moves at the deadline, but it wasn't much of anything. So, no one's really expecting much. Just continue enjoying the power that you're getting from Trey Mancini. Ryan Mountcastle's looking decent. John Means has come back. He hasn't looked amazing since coming back off the IL, but he has at least looked like the ace he can be. So Baltimore has some young pieces. And on the bright side, your top prospect, Adley Rutschman, was recently promoted to AAA. So keep an eye on him. He could get a couple at-bats in the majors this year. I wouldn't expect it, but it's always possible. So next, we go to the AL Central, where Chicago has a whopping 10-game lead, I believe, in this division. Cleveland's behind them. Detroit, Kansas City, and Minnesota round out the top of this division. So, Chicago, last year I was very high on Chicago. But I kind of warned you, I'm like, they're a young team, they're very volatile, they might go up and then they're going to tank. It's always possible. Unfortunately, that's what happened to them. But right now, this team is ready to go. Eloy Jimenez has come back. He was expected to possibly miss, until early September. He came back towards the end of July. He had a 2-home run game yesterday, so it looks like the power's back. Luis Robert's coming back today, Monday, as I speak. So, it's going to be interesting. They're getting their outfielders back. The one problem is both those guys coming up pretty serious injuries. You can't DH both of them. It looks like Jimenez is going to be the one playing the field, at least to start off. They might kind of rotate them. We'll have to see. But it's going to be very interesting how this team can do. They have the talent. And I got to say it. Why would you trade Madrigal for Craig Kimbrell? I don't get that. But still, you have probably one of the best bullpens now with Kimbrell and Hendricks out there. So, yeah. Now, Cleveland's still doing decent. They're not elite, but they're still doing decent. This team, it's kind of surprising that they're in this position, but we'll have to see if they can continue to stay in second place in this division. I don't know if it's more Cleveland's doing good than everyone else is doing bad outside of Chicago. Shane Bieber still out. Aaron Civale still out. These guys both were put on the 60-day IL recently. So we don't know how long until they're both going to be back, but they are at least both throwing at this point. So there's that. Zach Plesac, unfortunately, is really struggling right now. So there's a lot of questions about the pitching staff in Cleveland. But on the bright side, at least the offense is still having some good games. Jose Ramirez, superstar. What more is there to say about him? Detroit sits in third place in this division. And really, wow. Robbie Grossman's probably been the guy on this offense. He's having basically a career year. It's a great team. It's a young team. Unfortunately, a lot of the young players aren't doing as good as you'd hope, but there are still some talented players. Unfortunately for them, of course, Spencer Turnbull, he did throw a no-hitter earlier in the season. He did have to undergo Tommy John surgery. That's a big loss, but there's still a lot of talent, a lot of young talent in this team, in this organization. So the future is good, but this year, just kind of relax. Kansas City sits behind them. Kansas City's been dealing with some injuries, unfortunately. Adalberto Mendesi's basically only played a handful of games this year. He looks like he'll be coming back soon, but we've heard this story before. He's come back 2 or 3 times at this point, and then he got hurt again. But Whit Merrifield, probably the MVP of this team at this point. He's at least doing good. The average isn't as good as you'd hope for a contact guy like him, but he did steal his 30th base, so you got that going for you. Minnesota's got to be the biggest disappointment this year. It's sad. This team looked like they had a lot of power, a lot of potential, but here they are sitting in last place. They clearly were sellers at the deadline. They gave away some key pieces, including Jose Abreu. They got some star prospects in return. They're clearly just looking to retool. The big thing is going to be, can they re-sign Byron Buxton this offseason? We'll have to see. Next, we go to the AL West. Houston is in first in this division. Oakland's hanging behind them. Seattle is above 500, and they're hanging on to third place. Los Angeles and Texas round out the last 2 places in this division. So Houston got a huge break with something that happened with the Athletics. We'll get to that shortly. But, the Athletics, or the Astros, they're still a solid team. It's not like they stink. They're still producing. The pitching staff isn't as good as they were. As you can see with Framber Valdez, he is kind of struggling lately. But other players like Luis Garcia, he has stepped up in big ways. Zach Greinke's continuing to do what Zach Greinke does. So there's definitely a lot of talent in Houston. The real question is, what is going on with that offense? When is Bregman going to be back? He should be back soon. Correa, can he continue to be this red-hot player? Can Altuve continue to be red-hot? Is Kyle Tucker going to step back up, or is he going to continue to be hot, cold? There's a lot of questions with this team, but, they did fix their bullpen at the deadline, so we have kind of seen that, but unfortunately for them, they did just struggle in a series against Minnesota. So Oakland on the flip side, now they did just lose Ramon Laureano to a 80-game PED suspension. That is a tough loss. This team was relying on him. He has good speed, he has good defense, he has decent hitting, so losing him for that long definitely hurts, but they may have known because they did trade for Starling Marte at the deadline. So there's that. So Marte is just doing amazing this year. You can't complain about that. His health concerns are there, but I do think Oakland has a chance to make a potential run. They just need Olsen to continue to play out of his mind, and they may have to rely on Chapman to turn his game around. Seattle is probably one of the more surprising teams right now. They're doing solid. I mean, they're probably on the outside of the playoff picture. I wouldn't necessarily think they're going to make it. They have a chance. They'll have to kind of rally big time. Their only chance might be to win this division since they're only doing 5 teams in the playoffs per conference, but it's definitely possible. They've had some real talent lately. Now, really, he's got to be good. This team is good, I should say. Abraham Toro, he's continuing to just smash the ball. He has great power. Jared Kelenic kind of turning it around, but he's still a very volatile young player. We'll have to see how that works out. And Paul Sewald, really, this guy's getting wins. This guy's getting saves. He could be the future closer for this team. Remember, they do have Ken Giles for next year, but right now, Seattle probably on the outside looking in for the playoffs. Los Angeles has been a big disappointment this year. Obviously, Shohei Ohtani, definitely, just like Vladimir Guerrero Jr., those two have got to be 1 and 2 for the AL MVP race. I would personally give my vote to Shohei, but that's me. I'm not a voter. Other than that, Mike Trout has missed a lot of time due to injury. We don't know when he'll be back. Anthony Rendon was doing decent, not great, but decent. He's been shut down for the year. So there's a lot of question marks with the future of the Angels. The pitching staff isn't as good as it should be, but we'll have to see how the Angels can do. We have to address this offseason. There's a lot of questions to address, I should say. On the bright side, Joe Adele should just come back up after a very rough 2020. We'll have to see what happens with him. But last place, we have the Texas Rangers. I mean, this team's probably the worst team in the league right now. They are on a putrid stretch right now. They've lost 20 of their last 24 games. They were clear sellers at the deadline. They gave away Kyle Gibson, gave away Ian Kennedy. They gave away Joey Gallo. So, I mean, there's a lot of questions, but they're in a future mode. No denying that. Good luck to the Rangers, but you're still a couple years out. We'll go to the NL East now, where my Phillies have surged to first place. Atlanta is hanging in there in second place. New York has fallen to third. Washington's in fourth, and Miami is in fifth. The Phillies are probably the hottest team in baseball right now. They're on an 8-game winning streak. This is mostly in part to Bryce Harper playing out of his mind. It's kind of crazy. People are saying right now that he could be the NL MVP. I would absolutely love that. Bryce deserves the MVP this year, but I know, he's not the true cut MVP. It's just a lot of players that are NL favorites are hurt. I get that, but Harper, I'm gonna say he's underrated right now. He's playing out of his mind. He's helping this team. He's got a great energy that he brings to this team, the city. Everyone in Philly loves the guy. So, yeah, and Zach Wheeler, what he just did yesterday against the Mets, can't complain about that. That was a great start. The team needed it. It was the day they retired Roy Halladay's number. They just swept the Mets in a crucial 3-game series. That is critical. The Phillies needed to do that. The bullpen still has some concerns, but the way this offense has been playing, they can put it to rest a little bit. Atlanta, on the flip side, we'll have to see how this works for them. But, of course, since our last video, Ronald Acuna Jr. has torn his ACL, so that's a big loss for them. But this team made a lot of moves at the deadline. I wasn't expecting them to be buyers, but they were. It really looks like it's a good move for them. I mean, Jorge Soler's been hitting the cover off the ball since joining Atlanta. Other than him, the other players that they got have been okay, not spectacular. The pitching staff is still very patchwork. There's still a lot of question marks with it. We'll have to see how Atlanta can do if they can make a run. It's going to come down to, if they can outpace the Phillies and the Mets. The Mets are on the downside right now. They are not looking that good. It's tough. It's tough. This team, you'd think they'd be dominating, but here they are. They just got swept by the Phillies. They've been trending down recently anyway. The Mets definitely have some concerns, specifically in the pitching staff, but the offense needs to produce more than it's been producing. So, yeah, there's that. The Nationals, it's crazy. This Nationals team has been tough. I thought they'd be doing decent this year, but here they are. Clear sellers at the deadline. And, it was only 2 years ago that they went to the World Series with their trio of aces. Now, Patrick Corbin's struggling big time. Max Scherzer's no longer in Washington, and Strasburg isn't going to play the rest of this year. So it's been brutal if you're a Nationals fan. Trey Turner's gone. That's the one that really surprised me. Just enjoy Juan Soto. Hopefully you can have a bit of a rebuild next year. Miami, last place. There's nothing great, but, there's not too much to see here, but they can play spoiler. They have the ability to take games from their NL East rivals. They can be a team that helps Philadelphia, Atlanta, or New York win the division by just beating the other teams respectively. Next, we go to the NL Central, where Milwaukee's in first, Cincinnati's in second, St. Louis is in third, Chicago has fallen to fourth, and Pittsburgh sits in last. Milwaukee has been surprising me of late. This is still a good, talented team, but it really relies on the pitching staff, anchored by Brandon Woodruff, Corbin Burnes, and Freddie Peralta. The offense isn't as good as you might hope, but there's still a lot of talent here. So, the innings limits might start to kick in for players like Burnes and Peralta. If that does, it's going to definitely hurt Milwaukee for a potential playoff run, but they have to gear up for the playoffs, so they really can't complain. Cincinnati's been another team that's been doing good. Now, they started off the season hot with their offense just dominating. They have cooled off considerably, though, but they're still a good team. Castellanos, he spent some time in the IL. He's come back. Jesse Winker, on the flip side, he's just trending down. But Kyle Farmer has been picking up the slack. I have to mention Kyle Farmer. He's just doing great right now. Joey Votto, oh my goodness. This guy's just been dominating. He's been knocking in homers. He had an amazing stretch a week or two ago. So you have to look forward to the future if you're a Reds fan. Joey Votto is making his case for the Hall of Fame. He's going from a iffy to a surefire at this point. And one way to help him would be to get him a ring. So I'm going to say, St. Louis, St. Louis has been a slight disappointment to me. Alex Reyes is decent, so at least he stepped up as the closer. But we're still waiting for Jack Flaherty to come back. We're still waiting if Jordan Hicks can come back this year. Those are two young, exciting pitchers to watch, but it looks like they aren't going to get Hicks back for the rest of the year. Offensively, Arenado's been as advertised. He has suffered a little bit of a hit from leaving Coors, but he's still a good player. So there's that. The real question with this team, though, is how deep can they make a run if they can even make the playoffs this year? Chicago has been a bit of a disappointment. They're definitely trending downwards right now in the dog days of summer. It happens. You can't win them all. They were sellers at the deadline. They gave away every major asset that they had, excluding Wilson Contreras. But you can't win a championship or compete for a championship or even compete for the playoffs if your best player is your catcher. So that's all I got to say about the Cubs. Pitching, still decent, not spectacular. At least they do have Hendricks, though, Kyle Hendricks. And Pittsburgh sits in last. Is anyone really surprised about this? You shouldn't be if you are. They're not a good team. Brian Hayes has unfortunately been a disappointment. They got rid of Adam Frazier. So, yeah, this is not a good team. Now, lastly, we have the NL West, which is still led by San Francisco. Los Angeles is closing in on them. San Diego is in third. Colorado is in fourth. And Arizona is in fifth. So, San Francisco, this team has just been surprising everybody. They are dominating. This team's offense is red hot. This team's pitching is definitely doing better than anyone could have expected. So San Francisco, DeSclafani's looked great so far. Offensively, basically every player that they have is a reject at one point or another from another team. Darren Ruff's been crushing it. He's a former Philly. You have Brandon Belt, who should be coming back very soon. So, there's those two guys. Brandon Crawford's having a career, offensively speaking, year. So Buster Posey's doing great. It's just anyone on this team is doing great. The Dodgers, Cody Bellinger has been probably the biggest disappointment of the year, excluding the Minnesota Twins as a whole. So we'll have to see how that works out. But he does seem to be turning it around. He has had a couple of homers in his last couple games. So you have to hope he can turn it around. At the same time, the rest of us non-Dodgers fans don't want to see this Dodgers mini dynasty that they're trying to build win another World Series. So we're kind of rooting against him. But as a player, you can't really root against Bellinger. He's a good guy. They have Mookie Betts, who's also been struggling a little bit of late. He could be dealing with an injury, though. They do have Trey Turner now. They do have Max Scherzer now. Clayton Kershaw still out. But Walker Buehler is looking like the definite future ace of this team. Just imagine if this team was healthy with Dustin May, who's definitely done for the year after undergoing Tommy John. So, yeah. Next, we have San Diego. San Diego is on a little bit of a downturn, but they are doing good. So, I mean, we'll have to see how they can do if they can continue to play well. The real question with this team is Fernando Tatis Jr. Is he going to come back at all this year, or is he done for the year? You have to hope he comes back if you're a Padres fan or if you're a baseball fan in general. He wants to come back. He said he will try his best to come back, but it wouldn't be shocking to see his season come to an end just because they don't want to risk that shoulder injury becoming a long-term effect, especially after signing him to that massive deal. They might have to say, all right, tell you what, we're not going to put all our eggs in one basket for 2021. We have a young, talented core. We're going to look for the future. The real thing with this team is how long will Eric Hosmer be a Padre? Then you have the Colorado Rockies. I mean, Colorado is what they are. They are what they think what you think they are. Connor Joe is red hot right now. Trevor Story's okay right now. But this team, it's not a spectacular team. You can't go to Colorado and expect to easily sweep them, but you don't expect to get swept. You expect to take 2 out of 3 if you're playing Colorado. Now, their home stadium is doing what it does. CJ Cron's doing great as well. So there's a lot of potential for this team in the future. We'll have to see how they can do, but you're probably still a couple years away. Lastly, we have the Arizona Diamondbacks. Arizona is just a tough team. I mean, there's nothing really here. I always mention Madison Bumgarner, so let's mention Bumgarner once more. At least he is producing for the team. I will give them that. He's starting to do great, or solid, I should say. Other than that, I mean, Arizona doesn't have a lot of superstars, so you're not expecting much of anything. They got rid of Eduardo Escobar, so yeah. Again, this was the standing update as of the morning of the 9th of August, 2021. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Have a good rest of your day.